This question was actually emailed to me by a fan, and after I read it, I was surprised that I've never actually covered it. But then I got to thinking about it and I realized why I haven't covered it, and it's because there's no real answer to it. It's just kind of one of those things that you talk through and that you kind of have to dissect. And it's the topic of, why is it seen as better to lose before the NBA Finals than it is to actually lose in the Finals? And it's not that anybody ever says, oh, if I was an NBA player, I would rather just lose and not make it to the finals at all if I was going to lose anyways. Nobody really says that, but by the way we treat it, by the way we argue about it, the general feeling that people give off is that no one cares about losses before the finals, but everybody cares about the record in the finals. And so that's interesting because back in October, I was reading Elgin Baylor's book. It's a really good book, by the way. You guys should get it, Hang Time. And he went through pretty much all of his seasons, and that man got to the finals and lost so many times, so many close calls, things that were decided by a couple of shots, and he played his ass off too, so it wasn't like he didn't contribute. He was pretty much the best player they had, him or Jerry West. He had ridiculous stat lines, pretty sure he had that 60-point finals game, but at the end of the day, he could never get it done. And you see how that affects his greatness, right? When we talk about the 60s, nobody ever mentions him. They mention Wilt Chamberlain, or Jerry West, Bill Russell. He at times was the best player in the NBA back then, arguably, and he doesn't come up in any conversations. And I guarantee you if he had some rings he would. But when he does come up in a conversation, frequently you'll hear about his finals record. It's 0 and I want to say like 7, I don't know, it's something really, really bad. And from the way he's remembered, it's almost like he would have been better off just getting there and winning one, or just being a great player and not making it at all. I don't know, but I think the public opinion towards this topic is the way it is because the NBA Finals is such a large stage. It's the biggest stage in basketball, whereas the playoffs, they're a dime a dozen. First round, second round, third round, most players make it there. And nobody keeps a record of those rounds unless you're like Chris Paul and you had only played in one Western Conference Finals your entire career. Aside from the outliers like that, nobody keeps records for those. But everybody keeps records for especially how a great player, they keep records for how great players play in the NBA Finals. So obviously it's impossible to talk about this subject without getting into LeBron James. He's 3-6 in the finals. And that's used as an indictment, even though it's unfair. It's definitely used as an indictment from most people who dislike him. And it gets so bad that it goes to the point where you start kind of wondering, would he be better off if he was just 3-0 in the finals? Because at the end of the day, people are not raising banners for how many times somebody played in the NBA Finals. Like Jerry West, his record is 1-8. Nobody praises Jerry West for playing in 9 NBA Finals. If you hear about his finals record, it's about how bad it was. And I'm not even saying that that's right, because if you played in 9, 10, 11 NBA Finals, regardless of the circumstances, there was something special about you. Of course, I'm talking about star players. I'm not talking about players like Robert Horry that were always in the right place at the right time. I'm talking about guys who were the leaders of teams. If you played in all those NBA Finals, there was something special there. But I think this might just be one of those unfair parts of life that just come with the territory. Because as time passes, history starts to forget things. For instance, right now we're in the thick of LeBron's career. He's adding another chapter to it. And right now we know that, okay, 07, that was a crazy lopsided finals. 18 was a lopsided finals. Like, we know things like that there were a couple of losses there that had context to them. But I think by and large, history forgets context, which is the same reason people look at Jordan and just say he was 1-9 without Pippen in the first round. People add no context to that conversation of him playing the Celtics, the Larry Bird Celtics. So as history forgets context, real basketball junkies will always know. But when the record books for a player like LeBron says 3-6 or whatever it's going to say when he's done, maybe 3-7, who knows? Or it looks at a Jerry West or an Elgin Baylor who only won 1 championship out of the 9 times they were there, or Elgin who just won none, eventually that's what history remembers. It does not remember the details. And I think with the NBA Finals being the big stage that it is, I think that's why it starts to become a conviction of great players rather than something great. That's the same reason why I say the Warriors are going to end up in a certain place in the record books. Regardless of the fact that they're hated right now and people hate Kevin Durant, 30, 40 years from now, It's just going to be remembered as there was this crazy good team. They won X number of championships in X number of years. And again, basketball junkies, we're going to remember. And Kevin Durant might even be remembered as weak by a lot of people. But Father Time is undefeated in every aspect. Time is going to pass. And the books are going to say what they say. And so to answer this kid's question who emailed me, I'm not saying that it's right or that I necessarily agree with it, but because of what history does to context, I think that at least plays a part in why most people feel like, and not even just most people as a matter of fact, do you remember LeBron said this himself? He let it slip one time, I don't remember the year, but there was an interview where he wondered out loud if it was worth it to keep making it back to the finals just to lose. And then he recovered himself, because you can't be real for too long. You can't be real for too long in the media. He backed it up and said, nah, it's always good to play in the finals. But we at least know at a point in time, it's crossed his mind of if it was just better to just lose before. This is the guy actually going through it, and he's allowed wondered that. And while we're looking at how he feels about it, well, let me throw this out there. When he made the finals in 2007, we knew they weren't going to beat the Spurs. When he made the finals in 2018, I think everybody had money down on a sweep. And so knowing that, take those 2 losses off of his record and that puts him at 3-4, which is better than 3-6. So considering what history does over time, you have to ask yourself, well, what was the point of him making it to the finals just to have to face the Warriors last year? I'm not saying he should have lost on purpose, of course not. But what I'm saying is everyone knew that was a loss. People had that L written in pen before the finals even started. So maybe 30 years down the road, not having those 2 losses on his record, it probably helps, to be honest, just because we know how people are. I can keep going. I don't know Karl Malone's first round record. I don't know his stats for the Western Conference Finals or how many times he played there, but I know how many times he made it and lost. Kobe Bryant's air balls in the second round of the 1997 NBA playoffs, I guarantee you those air balls would hold more weight if they would have happened in the finals. So what happens now is, people look at those Kobe Bryant air balls that happened in the second round, and they use it as an inspiration story. They say, you know what, that was such an integral thing that happened to Kobe's development. It's why he ended up becoming one of the best players ever. Nobody uses it as an indictment, absolutely no one. I don't even see his haters talk about that as like an indictment on who he was. So nobody holds those shots against his legacy. As a matter of fact, they really add to his lore. And nobody knows Kobe Bryant's second round record. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about anybody's first or second round records, again, unless it's Jordan. And that's because he's currently in a debate right now with LeBron. But other than that, we don't keep those records. Nobody does. So long story short, to answer this kid's question, I think it's A. It's just that the finals are the big stage, the moments are bigger there, and that's where stories are written. And B, context gets jumbled and lost in history. So Jerry West's record is 1-8 in the finals, and I doubt anybody has ever looked back to see why. Whether it's good or bad, I don't think anybody's ever looked at that. They've looked at the numbers. And I think it's going to continue to be that way. So in 30 years, whenever LeBron's finals record is whatever it is, that's just what it's going to be to a lot of people. So I think that's why people treat it like it's better to lose before the NBA finals. And I think that's why LeBron himself wondered out loud if it would have just been better for him to lose before the finals.